Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing round 2 of reading your horror recommendations. If you missed it earlier this month, I posted a part 1 of reading your horror recommendations, which included 4 different books, and so this is going to be a second follow-up vlog, a round 2 of reading 4 more of your horror recommendations. Around mid-September, I posted a community post over on my YouTube page asking for different horror recommendations, as well as on my Instagram. I posted a little question box in my stories, and I was given so many horror recommendations that I wanted to split this up into 2 videos, and this is not the first time that I've done this video series. I've been doing this video series for about 2 years now, so if you are curious to see any of the previous times that I've done this, I'll have those linked down below. But yeah, let's get to it. I'm really excited about the 4 books that you guys picked for this round because 2 of them I've never even heard of these books before, and then the other 2 are books that I've kind of heard about and have kind of had on my own personal TBR for quite some time, and I'm finally getting around to them. Alright, so the first book that I'm planning to read for this video is The Exorcist House by Nick Roberts, and this falls into the category of I've never even freaking heard of this book. This book was recommended to me by 3 different people, and something that I thought was interesting was the comment about how horror books don't usually scare me, but this is one of like the scariest books that I've read or something of that nature. So that immediately had me intrigued, and the fact that this one just came up so often among the recommendations and the fact that I had never heard of it, I was like, okay, well, what the heck, definitely reading this one. So very excited to check this one out. I don't really know anything what it's about other than it's like there's an exorcist house. Like, I don't know. Second book that I'm going to be reading for this video is another one that was one of the more recommended ones that I have never even heard of, and that's Old Country. Apparently this is one that came out earlier this summer. This one was recommended by 3 different people, and in particular the recommendation that intrigued me about this is the comparison to Stolen Tongues. And if you were around last year when I did these videos, you would know that I read Stolen Tongues based off of your horror recommendations last year, and it ended up becoming one of my new favorite horror books. So the fact that this could even get compared to Stolen Tongues has me very intrigued. This next one is a horror book that I've been seeing this book around for years. I've had it recommended to me a number of different times, and I've been seeing my friends reading this one on and off. I just never knew if I was going to get around to it because it's RECS. And this story, I don't really know anything really about it other than it involves this witch that like haunts this small town. I think that's all I really know. This one was recommended to me 2 different times. There wasn't a lot of description. I mean, one of the comments said something of like, I never get scared by horror books, but this one really creeped me out. So anytime someone says something like that, it always makes me really intrigued. And so I'm really excited to finally get around to this one to see if it's going to be my thing. And then the 4th and final book that I'm going to be reading for this round of reading your horror recs is The Silent Companions, which this one was recommended 3 different times. This is another one that I feel like I've seen this book around a lot over the last few years. I actually think I had this one recommended to me like once or twice last year when I did this video of reading your horror recommendations. And so this time around I have even more people recommending it to me. And the comment that really intrigued me about this one is the comment of haunted house with a twist and very creepy. So that is like, okay, what the heck? Not gonna lie though, I did struggle to get my hands on this book. For some reason, as I was filming this, Amazon didn't have it. Book Depository did have it, but by the time I was going to be ordering it, like Book Depository takes way too long to ship to me usually, and then my library didn't have it. Like, getting my hands on this book was a struggle, so I ended up going with the ebook for this one. Alright, so those are the 4 books that I'm going to be reading for this round of reading your horror recommendations. I'm very excited because this is one of my favorite videos that I make on my channel. Anytime that I get to read your recommendations, it always ends up being so much fun for me. So let's send it back to about a week ago when I started reading these. Good morning, how's it going? It's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's not really morning, but I wanted to update you because I've started listening to RECS on audio. It was actually perfect timing because I was planning to start this book today, and then this morning I got the audiobook checked out from my library, so I was like, wow, maybe God is real. And I am currently 80 pages into this book, and I am finding it to be so fascinating so far. I kind of went into this not really knowing what it was about. I had just heard that it involved this kind of like creepy ass witch, and that's all I really knew. So interesting because we're following the characters that live in this town called Black Spring, and the whole town is haunted by this witch called Black Rock Witch. And basically it was this woman who, you know, she had lived in the town in the 1800s, and she had gotten like killed because they thought that she was a witch, or, you know, she has this whole history that they kind of explain, like, you know, right at the beginning of the book. But it's interesting because the elders of the town have kind of quarantined the town, so it's basically like once you live in Black Spring, you cannot leave, essentially, because she puts the curse on everyone that lives in that town. And so it's interesting because this town just kind of lives with this witch that haunts the town. Like, she'll just show up in like children's bedrooms, and she'll just show up like at the edge of your bed sometimes and just stare at you, and she doesn't necessarily harm anybody unless you harm her back in a way, but she's just kind of there, you know, she's just kind of around, she's just like walking through their town and shit. And so in this story we're following a few teenagers in the town who are deciding that they want to, you know, kind of like break the rules and try to make a video of her go viral, when it's like a huge thing. Like, they should not be doing that because they're supposed to be keeping this a secret in their town, because like they don't want the whole world to find out that their town is being haunted by this witch, because they're afraid of what might happen, you know, if that were to get out. And so these teenagers are like trying to make a video of this witch go viral. Like, they take a video of her just like walking through the town, and she's like super creepy, you know, because her eyes are like sewn shut and her mouth is like sewn shut, and she's like wrapped in these kind of chains. Like, I don't know, the descriptions of her are super creepy and weird. I feel like so far this is just so unique. Like, I've never read anything quite like this, but I'm really into it. I'm also loving the small town vibes to it. Like, it has really good atmosphere so far. I'm finding the idea of this witch to be super creepy, and it's just so well written so far. And we're at this point now in the story where these new people have moved into the town, and they're kind of like having their first experience with the witch. And so we finally get around page 60, I would say, is where it's at, where we get like a lot of the description. Like, we get more information about who this witch is, and like what the story is there, and like what they've tried to do to get rid of this witch in the past and how it doesn't work, and kind of like why they're afraid for this to get out into the world, and like why they recommend, or why you cannot leave this town after you've been living there because you're part of the curse now. It's really interesting. Like, I don't know, I'm really liking it so far. I'm just out here today, you know, chilling by the water. I just got an acai bowl and I'm just having a chill Friday morning. I also did bring a bunch of stuff. I don't know if you can see some of my stuff in the back here, but I have a bunch of stuff that I'm taking for donations to drop off at Value Village after I'm done here. And yeah, it's been a great morning so far. I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm glad that I'm enjoying this one as much as I am, because for some reason, for this video in particular, for the books that I'm reading for this video, this is the one that I had my doubts with. Like, this is the one that I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna be my thing, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But I was also thinking that without even really knowing what this book was about, so I'm glad that it's going well so far. Okay, hi, it's just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I wanted to do a quick update because I got all the way up to chapter 13, which puts me at almost 150 pages in, and things are happening. Shit's getting wild. Also, I wanted to update you because I got a Barnes & Noble coupon this morning for like 10% off, so I was like, okay, like, why don't I just go see around and see what they have? And I ended up getting 2 different mangas. The first one that I got is the Blood on the Tracks Volume 1. This is one that I've been hearing a lot of great things about, mostly from a lot of my friends. I know Katie said that this series is really good, and this manga series is just known to be really good. I've heard that it has major like Bates Motel vibes, because it's a lot about this mother and her son's relationship, and I've heard that it's kind of a slow burn, but that it's really good. And so I wanted to pick this one up because I wanted to have something manga to read during Monster Mash Weekend Ween, because one of the prompts that we did is to read either like a spooky manga or a creepy audiobook or something, so I definitely want to include this for my my Monster Mash TBR. And then I also randomly just picked up this one called Anti-Romance. There's only one volume of this out so far, but it's like a male romance manga series, and I just looked this up. Apparently this just came out in September, and I don't really know anything about it, but it looks so cute, and I was gonna see if my library had it, but it doesn't look like they have it. I looked online, and so I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just pick it up. So I don't know, I'm excited to check out a new manga series. I feel like this one, it's just starting to be getting published. Like, this one just came out in September, so the second volume isn't even out yet. So if I get hooked, it's gonna be a wait on this series, you know? But I'm really excited to have picked up both of these books. I'm probably gonna be driving back home now, and I'm gonna just continue listening to this on audio this afternoon. This is really good. I'm really enjoying it. It's the next night, and I haven't gotten the chance to update you very much, but I've been reading a lot more of RECS. In fact, I am currently on page 334, and I only have this tiny little chunk left. I think, you know, once we've reached the halfway point of this book, I do feel like it hit a bit of like a slower section where I just started not to care as much about what was happening at the beginning, or at least compared to the beginning, because I feel like this book had a really strong start, and I think the creepiness factor with like this witch or like this lady that's like cursing the town was really creepy and effective at the beginning, but then somewhere towards the middle it kind of lost me a little bit with like the creepy factor. I mean, I guess I just didn't care as much about the plot and like the direction of where I felt like the story was going towards the middle of it, but you know, now that I'm getting towards the end, things are really starting to ramp up right now, and so I just wanted to update you before I finish it because I feel like now things are really gonna start to be happening. So I just wanted to document my feelings because I've read a lot of pages since yesterday afternoon after I got home, and I just feel like part of it did lose me there for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, like it just got a little bit slow and a little bit repetitive, and I think that's just because of the length of this book, you know, because this one is about 380 pages, but I'm still loving the atmosphere in this book. I feel like this is one of the better you know, kind of small town horror books that I've read in a while, because you can really feel the town. It's almost like the town is a whole nother character in its own way, which is something that I really like. And I also, you know, I love it kind of has that like under the dome feel where you feel like you can't leave the town because of some kind of like curse, like in this case with the witch. It's very entertaining, you know, but I feel like this ending, now that I'm starting to get close to the end, it's really getting unhinged. So like I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm gonna try to finish it tonight. I'm gonna finish listening to it on audio tonight, and then I will update you in the morning. Good morning. It is the next morning, and last night I finished reading RECS, and this book I just have very mixed feelings on. I feel very mid about this book because I feel like, for me personally, I feel like the first half of this book was a lot stronger than the last half of this book. I just really started to lose interest in what was going on, and as much as I love, you know, the idea of this witch, I feel like this is one of those situations where I really like the idea of this book a lot more than I like the execution of this book, because, you know, the idea of it is really strong, and I thought the beginning of it was really strong and really creepy, but at the same time it's kind of like this witch doesn't really do a whole lot. You know, I feel like she's just in the town to be creepy and weird, and they're supposed to keep it a secret, which I kind of like the fact that, you know, we're following this small town that's like supposed to be keeping this witch a secret from the rest of the world. Like, again, the concept is just really cool, but at the same time I feel like the story just never really went anywhere and like really where I wanted it to go. I feel like you know, especially the middle of this book just really drags for me. Like, I almost just wish it wasn't as long as it was, because after page 200 I was just so bored and kind of like ready for this book to end. I feel like this probably could have done a lot better if it was more of a short story, like maybe even a novella, or maybe just around 200 pages. Like, I don't think it needed to be nearly 400 pages to tell this story. Also, why are there so many like graphically violent scenes that involve involve boobs and nipples? Like, what is going on? Like, you can tell this was written by a man by the amount of weird violence and weird scenes that involved boobs and nipples. Like, I'm not even kidding. There were so many, especially towards the end. It was brought up again and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, why? It was just very strange. It was definitely a choice. I don't think that needed to be there. I mean, I know the nipple violence was definitely in there just to make you uncomfortable, and like, mission achieved, sir. So yeah, I think I'm probably gonna end up giving this one like a 3 out of 5. This book definitely had some moments. Like, I mean, like I said, the first half I thought was really good. It was looking like it was gonna be like a 4 or 5 star book for me at the beginning. Could have done so much more with a plot like this, but I just wasn't a huge fan of the direction the story ended up going in. So yeah, I think I've settled on a 3 out of 5 for this one, which is fine, you know, like I didn't hate it. It was just fine. Now, you know, today it's Sunday. I think today I'm going to start on the next read, which I think is going to be The Exorcist House, because I'm just so curious about this one. It's not too long either. This one's only about like 270 pages or so, and it just sounds really interesting, looks really interesting. So I think this is going to be the next one that I pick up for this video. Oh! I wanted to do a quick update because I'm about 60 pages into The Exorcist House, and I don't know what is up with the copy of this book. Like, I just bought this book on Amazon, and some of these book pages literally just keep falling out of the book. Like, I've never had this issue before. I think there's something wrong with like the binding of the spine of this book, because it's happened almost like 5 times now, where if I pull too hard on a page when I'm flipping it, it'll literally just pop out of the book. So that's kind of annoying. But this story is interesting. Okay, the story is interesting because we're following this family in 1994. We're following this guy, Daniel, who's a psychologist, and him and his wife, who's pregnant. They end up buying this house that's on this farmland that's in the middle of West Virginia. It's creepy because what they're starting to realize is that this house was previously owned by this guy who was an exorcist. And right in the prologue of this book, it opens with March 1993, and we kind of see the old man who was like the exorcist. We have this like really kind of obnoxiously written scene where he, you know, thinks that he sees his wife and his son who like died when he was 8 years old, but it's actually probably just like some kind of demonic thing making him think that that's what he's seeing. It's this whole scene where like the house burns down, right? And then the next chapter we jump back to the present day in 1994 when this guy, Daniel, and his family are buying this home. But something that I'm not really, like, I don't know, I guess I just don't understand why, is like the perspectives in this book. Like, it feels so random because we're following Daniel and his family, and like I'm intrigued enough, I guess, by this family, but then in alternate chapters we also do get the point of view of this guy who's a construction worker, who was like a construction worker that's working on the house. To be honest, his chapter just felt a little bit like unnecessary. Like, I feel like this book is just not very well written, in my opinion. Like, the writing just isn't that great. The dialogue, a lot of it just feels really cringy, and like I feel like people don't actually talk in this way. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just not very well written. Like, some of the dialogue is just so cringy. Like, I was reading some of it out loud to like my mom and my sister, and they were both like, what? And I was like, yeah, like I don't know, the writing just isn't my favorite. There's more than one chapter that follows from the point of view of this guy who was like in the construction worker. And like after those 2 chapters, I guess I can see why they were there. But I also feel like they just weren't necessary. Like, you could have kind of explained what happened to that man just from the point of view of our main protagonist, Daniel, and it would have probably been fine or even better. So I don't know. I mean, so far it's feeling a little bit cliche, you know, it's like definitely following that typical like horror movie kind of setup where it's like a couple buys a new house and it's like a farm in the middle of nowhere, and there's all this history surrounding this house about this exorcism that happened there and some things in the basement, and you know, it's feeling very like setting up like any other typical horror thing. So I'm hoping that the rest of the story doesn't feel as cliche to me as the beginning does. And also this writing style just definitely is not my favorite. Like I'm just not a huge fan of the writing in this book, and the characters all just feel like really cheesy, like one-dimensional cliche type of characters so far. So far it's not going super well, but it is about 3:15 in the afternoon. I just poured myself an iced coffee, and I think I'm just going to continue and hope it improves, because this book is really highly rated on Goodreads right now, and almost all of my Goodreads friends have given this 4 or 5 stars. So I'm like, it's gotta improve, right? Tink. Tink. Oh, he's such a dork. Rachel's making these Halloween M&Ms.
They're goals mix.
And she rolled up all the dough. And then she's cutting out little ghosties and pumpkins.
Yeah, what about it?
For the ultimate fall snack. For the ultimate fall cookies. Because these already have little ghosts and pumpkins and bats.
Now,
yours
in there.
Gabs, you make good stuff. Show them that.
Yeah, mine are in the oven.
yeah, whatever.
We're gonna do a taste.
Gabby's have no fun.
Well, mine are just like
Gabby said no fun.
See, who goes to the
mine
next round.
are out of the box.
Whatever.
Like, they're good. They're Nestle as well. They're not seasonal. I got the caramel turtle pecan ones.
Well, who goes on to the next round? That's the thing.
Me,
No.
as always.
Okay, Rachel's cookies are super cute. Some got a little fucked up, like that one, but they're still cute, you know, cute. And then look at mine. Oh, glorious. Glorious, beautiful, stunning. We've got, you know, some caramel in there. We've got chocolate chips, and then also pecans. And these are the ones you can get at Safeway. They're like the pecan turtle delights. Oof, they hit. Look at how cute. My whole family is wearing merch. Dad's got the Camp Weekend Ween. This is the OG. Oh. And then mom is wearing the Summer Ween Classic. And then Rachel is wearing the Spring Fling Ween. Like, amazing. Nobody planned this. We love a supportive family. We should make Tank a shirt. Yeah, what the heck? Yeah, Tank, you need your own Summer Ween shirt, Tanky. And Feeny. Tank just wanted to say good morning. Hi, Tinky. Good morning. Oh, he has fuzz on his face. Hi, it's the next morning, and I wanted to update you because last night I finished reading The Exorcist House. And yes, I did finish this entire book within one day. It is a very quick read. It is only about 270 pages, so it flew by very fast because the writing was very simplistic. You know, the writing was very easy to read, easy to get into, and that's about where the compliments for this book kind of end for me, sadly. Well, first off, I just want to say too, how weird is it? And I've never had this happen with a book that I've ordered off of Amazon before, but like every third page in the book would just fall out of the book, and it was so frustrating to read because while I was reading it, I kept having to like try to shove the page back in there, and then it made it really annoying because now all of the top, I don't even know if you can see that, but like all of the top is completely uneven because I had to keep shoving pages back in, and it just looks ridiculous. Like, you can tell that almost a third of the pages have just completely fallen out, and I just had to jam them back in there, and now it looks all weird. And it was like one of the most frustrating reading experiences that I've ever had, with like every third page just like falling out. It was just a freaking mess. Maybe I would recommend not ordering this book on Amazon and just getting like the ebook or something if you want to read this, because this shit was so annoying. I do have some mixed feelings about it, you know, and I think I'm gonna give this 2 stars instead of 1 star, which I know feels a little generous for me because of how much I disliked this, but I think I am gonna give it 2 stars because I do think there were some interesting things happening around the middle of this book, to the point where I was like, oh shit, okay, maybe things are improving, because for the whole time I thought I was gonna give this 1 star, like for sure. I thought it was gonna be one of my worst books of the year, and to be honest, it still is probably. There was some interesting things happening towards the middle of this book that I was like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of interesting. Like, I was liking the direction it was going in, but it wasn't until after 120 pages in where I started to feel like, oh, okay, this is actually getting getting kind of interesting. But then I feel like once we hit about page 200 or around like 220, it just completely lost me again and it got so cheesy and like ridiculous. So I'm like, okay, there was a solid like 100 pages where I was actually kind of invested and cared about what was going on. So for that reason, I'll bump it up to 2 stars instead of giving it 1 star. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer, and I feel like this book, even though I think the concept is slightly interesting, I could not deal with this writing. Like, the writing was just so bad, in my opinion. Like, the writing was just terrible. Like, I was reading so many of the quotes out loud to my family and being like, do people actually talk in this way? And they were like, like, that's a little cheesy there. So, like, I just want to give you a couple examples of the writing and I think why I'm being so harsh about this, because listen to this writing and the way that these characters talk to each other. So this is on page 22, and he's talking to her pregnant bump, you know, like the pregnant belly. He's talking to their child, which I know is something that couples do, but he's like, have you had a big day, my little surprise baby? And she's like, surprise baby? And he's like, well, I was going to go with mistake baby or accident baby, but I thought better of it. And she's like, if I can knee your face right now without hurting the baby, I would. And he's like, are you ready to help mommy and daddy buy a new house in the country? We're moving 1 state south on a big 30-acre farm. And just like continues, like there's a whole scene where he talks to her as like talking to the baby, and then she talks back to him like she's the baby. It's a little obnoxious. And that's like not the only scene. Like, there's multiple scenes where he does this, where he like talks to her stomach and she talks as if she's the baby back, and it's just kind of annoying. There's also a joke because their daughter's name is Alice, and so of course he makes the joke. He's like, just don't go falling into any rabbit holes and winding up in Wonderland, because their daughter's name is Alice. Like, oh, it's just so cringy. And then there's a scene where, this is on page 64, where he's getting introduced to this boy, and the boy says that he's 17, and he's like, oh, 17, huh? Stevie Nicks over there is on the edge of 17 herself. Like, bro, it's just so cheesy. There's even this scene that's supposed to be really intense when he's, you know, going to the basement, and it's saying that he's running downstairs to the basement, and then it's like he slid across the floor like he was stealing third base and turned on the flashlight. Like, what? Like, he was stealing third base. It's just written in a way that it feels so incredibly cheesy to me. Like, whether it's like the cheesy kind of dad jokes or the dad remarks like that, or the cheesiness of like describing this urgency of running down and then he slides like he's sliding into third base. Like, what? It's just the writing in this book was definitely a choice. I just wasn't a really big fan of the writing. I honestly wish I took down even more notes of just like the strange behavior or the things that like the things that these characters would say that would just have me going, what? Like, who talks like that? I also thought this main character was just super funny because, you know, they hire this 17-year-old boy because the 17-year-old boy comes by and he's like, hey, I used to do the lawn for the guy that used to live in this house, and I was wondering if I could still do the lawn for your house because, like, I'm looking to get, you know, some summer work or whatever and still get paid. And they were like, yeah, for sure. And the, you know, the teenage boy, he's like, yeah, I can take on any projects that you need, and, you know, you can pay me for those or whatever. And the dad just is totally like, oh yeah, like, can you actually go and fix our fence as well and like get started on that today? And then they get this dog, and he's like, can you go to the town and pick up a dog food for our dog? And it's just like, he's treating him like this little teenage boy is his bitch, basically. Like, it was just making me laugh because he was like, he literally just offered to help with the lawn and like do some chores for you, and now you're like sending him to town to get your dog food, like he's your personal assistant or something. Like, I don't know, it was just very strange. I guess there was just a lot of character behavior and dialogue that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I was just like laughing a lot of the time because I was like, this is so bizarre, like, who talks like this? I don't know. I feel like I have to give this book 2 stars because even though, you know, there were some creepy, interesting things kind of happening about halfway through the book, and where I finally got invested in the spookiness, because I feel like at the beginning it was feeling very cheesy and felt like a lot of horror stuff that I've read before. You know, it was following a lot of the same horror tropes where it's like there's something in the basement, and, you know, they kind of like weird things start to happen when they go to the basement, and they can hear things and they think they see things, and, you know, it just felt very similar to a lot of other horror things that I've read. But then there was something going on after page 120 where I was like, oh, okay, this is actually kind of creepy and weird, and for a while there I was starting to enjoy it and starting to get invested, even though the writing never improved, let me just say that. And then I also never cared about the characters. I was starting to get invested in the story and I was excited to see where it was going, but then, oh my god, those last, you know, 50 pages or so just really lost me again, and I was like, okay, now we're back on the cheesy train. I'm also glad though that I didn't end up enjoying this one because I don't want to have to keep this book because it's all fucked up with all these pages falling out. It's literally so annoying. Like, I've never had this issue with a book before. I can see why other people might really enjoy this. It just personally was not for me. Hi, hello, how's it going? I'm gonna be starting on Old Country next, which I am so excited about. I'm so curious to read this one. I barely got the chance to start on this book yesterday. I only got about 29 pages in, but that already put me at part 2 of this book. So I'm like, things are moving quick here. Also, can I just read you the first sentence because I'm kind of obsessed. It just says, well, the first time I killed a person, I actually killed 2 people. Pretty much at the same time, or back to back within a couple seconds of one another. Like, that's the first sentence. Very intriguing, like, immediately gripped me. In this story, it actually does kind of have a similar premise to the last one that I just read, because in this book, we're following this couple who is moving, and they're going to be moving across the country. They're moving from, like, I think from Colorado, and they're moving up to Idaho. But something that I'm enjoying more about this one already compared to the last book that I read is that the writing is so much better, and that I'm already caring so much about these characters, because in this story, we're following this guy named Harry and his wife Sasha, and Harry is a former Marine, and he has so much trauma from the war, and I feel like his character's already being really fleshed out. Like, I feel like I have a really good understanding of like who he is and his personality and what he's been through. And then also his wife Sasha is like, she kind of talks about how she's so mad that the war like took so much from him because he's still struggling so much with PTSD from that. And she's kind of like worried about, you know, this move and how they're going to be kind of like out in the middle of nowhere and he might not be able to go to therapy as much as he's used to. So she's kind of like worried for his mental health and his, you know, well-being. But they've always had this dream that they wanted to kind of like move out to the middle of nowhere and have like a plot of land to call their own, and this has been like a lifelong dream of theirs. And so they've been married I think for about like 10 years now, and they've decided to finally make this move and make it happen. And it's interesting because their only neighbors are these people named Dan and Lucy, and they live like, I want to say like a mile down the road. Like, they're pretty far, but they're like the closest neighbors that they have, and then they're literally like alone out there surrounded by like national forest and stuff. So it's interesting though because I'm just now on part 2, so I'm only 29 pages in, and at this point all that's happened is that they've moved to the new house and they just met the new neighbors. But I think what's going to end up happening, just based on the description, it's saying that the new neighbors are going to tell them that this house is haunted and that there's like a reason why this house has been sitting empty for a really long time. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen as far as like spooky things go, because so far nothing really like creepy has happened yet. But I'm really enjoying like the build up of the characters, and like this author is doing a really great job of setting up the scene of like, you know, this house in Idaho. Like, I can really visualize it because the writing is so descriptive and it's really good. And so yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. I actually just downloaded the audiobook from Libro because I was just thinking, you know, since I got the library book from my library, I thought maybe it would be a good idea just to check out the audiobook from Libro. So I did. I just downloaded it and I'm caught up to where I'm at now. I'm only 7% of the way in, so I figured I would just listen to this today. I just poured myself a cute little iced coffee. I got one of those Starbucks, like the Starbucks brand of caramel macchiato, and on the little bottle it says buttery flavor or like something extra buttery or something, and I was like, what does that mean when like referring to coffee as buttery? And then I sipped it and I was like, oh, that's what it means. It is very buttery. Like, I don't even know how to explain, but it is. So yeah, anyways, jumping right back into this one now. Hello, it's the next day. I'm sorry I didn't update this vlog at all yesterday, but I don't know what was going on with me yesterday. I just didn't update this vlog. But I did want to let you know that I am still reading Old Country. I got 164 pages in, and this shit is really interesting. Something that I did want to mention about the audiobook that kind of bothers me, you know, because in this audiobook we are getting the point of view from the husband and the wife. So we have two narrators on this audiobook, and I think it's freaking hilarious and also kind of weird because the dude that's narrating this husband sounds like really older. Like he sounds like he's, I don't know, like I don't want to put an age on it, but he sounds like he's quite a bit older, the guy that's narrating it. And then the one that's narrating the wife literally sounds like a teenager. Like she sounds so young. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's an awkward pairing for this audiobook choice. Like I don't know who thought that they would sound like a couple, I don't know. But it does kind of bother me just a little bit, just because it sounds like there's such a huge age gap, and I know there's not supposed to be. They're only supposed to be like 10 years apart. But otherwise, besides that small little like nitpicky thing, I'm really enjoying this one. I think it's really interesting. Now I can update you with actually what this book is about because I have more of an idea of what's going on. Moved to this new land in Idaho, and so their neighbors come over one night and they're like, hey, we need to have a serious talk about this land. And the neighbors basically tell them that this land, like this whole valley where they're living, is haunted and cursed by this spirit. But the thing that makes this book really interesting and unique is that this spirit takes on a different form of like how it haunts them depending on what season it is. So like in certain times of the year, like in the springtime, it does this weird thing where it's like it'll haunt them like in the water. Like it's this light that happens in the water of like the little pond or the little, you know, the little water that's like on their land, and they're like, what the fuck? And there's like certain instructions on how they have to like stop this this thing from haunting them. But the one in the summertime, oh my god, terrifying. Literally the one in the summertime like scares the like the idea of it really scares the shit out of me. This is on page 84, so it's not like a major spoiler about what happens to them in the summer, but it might, some people might consider this to be a bit of a spoiler. So if you don't want to hear it, just skip ahead a few seconds. But basically in the summer, there's this thing that they have called the bear chase, where basically how the spirit haunts them is by sending this naked man. Okay, we get a naked man, full bare ass naked, running through the woods, screaming for help, and then a bear is chasing him. I've talked about this before, about how in movies, like especially in horror movies, nudity, for some reason, like if somebody's naked and running, or like naked and chasing you, I don't know why, it's like way scarier than if they're just like, you know, completely clothed. But like for some reason, them being naked just makes it scarier somehow. And so this is really like right on the money with my fear right there. Like, oh my god, it's terrifying. But it's like, it's scary because they're not supposed to be afraid of the bear, because the bear is just a distraction. Like the spirit is just using that bear. What they should be afraid of is the man. Like the neighbors keep emphasizing, they're like, do not let this man get near you, and do not, like, you know, it's kind of like It Follows almost. It reminds me of It Follows, where like there's something that's following you. He's kind of chasing. They said he'll never run faster than like a light jog, but he'll be like aiming right towards you. Like he'll be coming towards you. He'll be like eyes locked on you, like help me. And it's absolutely terrifying. Like what the fuck? So at this point in time, I'm still in the summer months of this book. And it's interesting because I like that, you know, it's slow to reveal like what's going to be happening. Like I know what happened in the spring, that was in part 1, and then now I'm in part 2 in the summertime, and I don't know what's to come in the fall. They said this spirit, it takes a break in the winter time or something, so they're not going to be expecting anything to happen in the winter, but in the fall, I don't know like what kind of form the spirit will take. And I just think that that's so fun and so unique. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this, where there's like a spirit that changes during the seasons. Like I don't know, it's just really cool. It reminds me of a lot of things that I love, like It Follows obviously is one that comes to mind. But yeah, whoa, what a freaking weird book, right? Like I'm loving it so much. My only complaint, I guess, with this book so far is that I don't love the way that the female, like the wife, is written in this book. She just, I don't know, some of her dialogue is just kind of cringy. I don't know if I'm being like way too nitpicky about it, but I just don't love the way that they wrote this wife. Like sometimes I really like her, and then sometimes I'm like, why? Like who says that? But I do like the fact that we get the husband and the wife's point of view, because I feel like it's interesting to see both of them, because the husband is a little bit more skeptical about what's going on, and she tends to be a little bit more like, she believes that there's actually like a spirit here, whereas he's trying to figure out like how this could be logically explained, you know, like he's definitely a non-believer of like the supernatural. So it's interesting because I like getting both of their perspectives in that way. But yeah, really exciting stuff. I just finished filming a video, and now I think I'm going to go and get like coffee coffee and a breakfast sandwich or something, even though it is like 1 o'clock, because I want something to eat and I think I'm gonna try to finish this book today. Like, that is the plan. It's been a couple of hours. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon, but I wanted to let you know that I finished reading Old Country. Gosh, I don't know how I feel about this one. I feel like I have a lot of mixed feelings about it because I feel like this is one of those books where it had so much potential. It had one of the coolest premises that I've ever read, but at the same time, I didn't love the execution of this book for a few different reasons. Like, I think the concept is fantastic, absolutely fascinating, like a spirit that kind of haunts this whole valley, and there's all these like really interesting and unique rules and like the way it goes about doing it. I've never read anything quite like this, and there was so much about it that I really enjoyed. There were some scenes, especially the scenes that took place in the summer, that were truly terrifying for me. Like, I was like holding my breath. I was like, what the fuck? But then there were some scenes that I found to be a little bit repetitive and just kind of like underwhelming because, you know, when you start to learn what each season is about, the scenes just start to get really repetitive because it's like the same thing happening over and over again, and you know what to expect and you know what's coming. So like sometimes I didn't love that, like especially in the fall. I feel like once this book got to like the fall and the winter seasons, it really slowed down for me, and it was just so like the pacing was really slow and I didn't care for that. I also don't like love the way that these characters are written. I know that I was talking about how the writing in this book is really good at the beginning, and I do agree that the writing is pretty good, but I just don't like the way that these characters are written, you know, because some of like the wife, like she literally barely has any personality, and I just didn't really like the way they wrote her as a female character. Like, it was just kind of obnoxious. But then also his character, Harry, I mean, I know he's a Marine that's dealing with a lot of like PTSD, but he's also written in a way that's just like the stereotypical like toxic masculine man, and it's just really annoying, like the way he just talks about his obsession with guns, and he has like an anger, you know, issue, and it's just, I don't know, he seems like he has these like violent outbursts that are just so, I don't know, it's just, I didn't love the way either of their characters were written, even though I did like their relationship for the most part, but just them as individual characters, like they both frustrated me quite often throughout the book. But I also do think there was something interesting happening in this plot towards the end that was kind of, it wasn't like a plot twist, but it was just an element to the plot that I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting, and I didn't see that coming, and I liked the way that it played a part in the story. But then also the ending was like not my favorite. I wasn't a huge fan of the way this book ended. It just felt very cheesy. Like, oh my gosh, there was one scene, especially listening to the audiobook, where it was so cheesy. And I don't know if it would have been a little bit more effective if I was reading it, but somehow I don't think it would be. It was just like the voice that the audiobook narrator tried to do. It was like, I don't know, it was just too much. It was a little cheesy, a little extra, and I also don't really, I don't know, there was just something about this ending. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. It felt very cliche, very cheesy. I wanted more of a spooky ending from this one, I think. You know, I think that would have been better. I don't know. I just have such mixed feelings on this one. I feel like it's gonna be about a 3-star for me, just because I do have a lot of positive feelings towards it that I don't want to give it anything lower than a 3-star, but at the same time, I don't think I can give it anything higher than a 3-star. Man, you know, what a bummer, because I feel like with a premise like this, it really did have potential to be a new favorite, because that is so unique, that is so interesting, but it's also kind of hard to have a premise like this, you know, because I do think it can feel a little repetitive. Even if the thing that the spirit is doing is like different every season, it's still like, once you know what it's trying to do in each season, those scenes within that season start to get a little repetitive, you know? Now, the only book that I have left to read for this video is The Silent Companions, which I am so nervous to read this one, mostly because of the historical type of aspects with this one. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, so We shall see. Okay, hi. So I am working on starting my last read for this video, which is going to be The Silent Companions, and I am struggling, friends. Because, okay, first of all, trying to get my hands on a physical copy of this book was like nearly impossible for some reason. When I was preparing to do this video, it wasn't available on Amazon. It was only available through Book Depository, but I was like, what the heck, because Book Depository usually takes forever to ship to me. So I was like, realistically, I don't think I'll be able to order off of Book Depository because they usually take like 2 to 3 weeks to ship to me, and I didn't plan enough in advance for this, so that wasn't gonna happen. So I ended up downloading the ebook on my phone, right? And then I was like, okay, cool, but I'm like really distracted these days, especially with my phone. Like if I'm on my phone, it's really hard for me to read for some reason because, you know, the notifications on my phone, I just get easily distracted. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read this on my phone. So I was thinking, especially because, you know, this book in particular is a little bit out of my comfort zone, you know, because we do have a historical kind of writing style happening in this book. And so I was like, I'm gonna need the help of the audiobook to get through this, right? Because it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, and then it's also like I'm trying to read it on my phone. And so then yesterday I was like, okay, I'm going to check my library for the audiobook, and the library does not have the audiobook. I checked Libro does not have the audiobook. And then I went to Audible, which is like my last resort usually, and Audible does have the audiobook as an Audible exclusive, which honestly, like that's one of the most annoying things when Audible does like exclusive audiobooks with books like this, because I'm like, gosh, that's so annoying. Like, why do you make it an Audible exclusive? And so I was like debating it, but then I was like, okay, I downloaded the Audible app and I was literally only gonna use Audible so that I could listen to this book. And when I went to try and download it, it said, this is not available for your country or whatever, and then I realized the audiobook is not even in English. And apparently, you know, because yesterday when I was on my Patreon reading sprints, I was discussing this with my Patreon, and they were letting me know that, yeah, there is no English language audiobook for this book. So there's only an audiobook that's in the German language, and there's no English language audiobook, which is just... And you know, these days, as embarrassing as it is to admit, I feel like these days when I don't have the audiobook, like sometimes I really struggle with getting through a book, and I know that that's stupid, especially for something like this that's like a little bit outside of my comfort zone. Like the writing just feels very historical, and it's hard for my brain to focus on the words, especially because I'm trying to read this on my phone. You know, I did check my library and they do have one physical copy, but it's currently checked out and it's not going to be available for another week or so. Yesterday I read 31 pages of this book on my phone while I was on Patreon reading sprints, and so far the story just feels very slow and I have no idea what's going on, if I'm being honest. Like there's a lot of carriages, there's a lot of horses, the writing just feels very historical. We're following this woman and she's going to this place. Like I don't really know, to be honest, what's happening, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm gonna try to continue reading this, but if it's still not going very well, then I might have to DNF this one because I am just not really in the mood right now, if I'm being honest, to read historical. And to be honest, I don't know if historical horror like this is my kind of horror anyways, you know? If I had realized beforehand that it was going to be historical, then I would have prepared a little bit better for this, you know? Like I just feel very unprepared. Hey, hi, I'm back with another update, and I'm back with the final update of this video because I am 73 pages into The Silent Companions, and I'm so sorry. I feel awful, but I think I'm gonna have to DNF this book, which I know, oh my god, what a bummer that I had 2 DNFs out of the 8 books that were recommended to me for this, you know, little video series, but I cannot continue with this book for the life of me right now. I'm not saying this is a bad book, okay? This is definitely a me thing, it's not the book. And something that I think is really cool about doing these kind of videos where I read your horror recommendations is that I learn a little bit more about my specific taste in horror. And I think I've discovered, I mean, I kind of knew this, but this just confirms for me that I don't really like historical fiction mixed with horror. There's something about reading historical fiction that just bores me to tears. And even though this book, I mean, there's not a lot of interesting things happening in this book, I feel like it's hard for me to get into because the language that's being used is really hard to get into. I mean, we're talking about, you know, historical fiction, because this book in particular, some of the chapters take place in 1865, and then some of the chapters in alternate chapters, it takes place in 1635. Okay, so we're talking a long ass time ago. I think part of the issue too is, you know, trying to read this only on on my phone because I'm distracted enough as it is trying to read on my phone these days, but reading something like this, like my brain cannot fathom the words. And like there's only been one kind of spooky-ish scene that's happened so far. It involved there's one scene that involved these dolls that was kind of weird, and then there was another scene that involved like she was hearing noises in this room and it was kind of creepy. But to be honest, I'm just not invested in this. I don't care enough to continue, and the idea of picking this book up right now is like making me not want to read. Like I'm not gonna like I'm already afraid of getting into a reading slump because Taylor Swift is dropping Midnights very soon, and I've been trying to read this book on and off for like the past week almost. Like it's been nearly 7 days of me on and off trying to read this, and it's just not happening. So I apologize that I'm gonna have to DNF this book. I feel like this is a book that I might, like maybe in the future, I might come back to if a lot of you think that it's something that I would really like. Hello. Phoenix. But for right now, it's a DNF. I don't think historical fiction horror is my particular thing. Yeah, this video was kind of alright, you know, it wasn't as successful as the previous video. If you weren't aware, this is part 2 in a series that I did this year of reading your horror recommendations. I will have part 1 linked down below, which was kind of a better time because I found 2 new favorite books in that video. And in this video, I read, you know, these 4 books. I think if I had to pick a favorite out of all the books that I read in these last 2 weeks, I think it would be Old Country, just because I did have a lot of fun with the concept in this book, and I thought it was just really unique and unlike anything that I've read before, so I did like this one. And I did have a lot of fun with RECS, especially at the beginning. I think this one also has a really unique concept and is not like anything that I've ever read before. So these 2, even though I ended up giving them like mid ratings, around 3 stars, I still did enjoy my time reading these. Whereas I'm so sorry, but the Exorcist House and then, you know, the Silent Companions, like these were just books that were not for me. I can see why other horror fans might enjoy them. They're just not exactly what I'm looking for when I read horror, you know? It was mostly just the writing with this one, to be honest. Like I did like the ideas, the concepts were pretty interesting, but the writing in this one was a big no for me. Anyways, that's going to be a wrap on this round of reading your horror recommendations. Thank you so much to anybody who sent in a horror recommendation. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you. Even though this video didn't go as well as the first, it's still a video that I absolutely love to make every single year. And if you haven't heard, I am still planning on doing a video where I read classic horror books, but I am scrapping it for October and pushing it to November just because a lot of things came up this month that were a little bit unexpected and I didn't have as much time as I thought I would, so I thought I would prioritize these videos of reading your horror recommendations for October, and then next month I'll be doing the video of reading some classic horror books, which I'm really looking forward to. So, you know, I hope you could stick around for that, and thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these books that I just mentioned in this video, then please let me know your thoughts on them. Let me know if you plan to read any of these, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!